welcome. Welcome to the Infobip Pangea campus. So my name is Monica. I'm the MC of this event. Welcome to the MTF at Infobip. I hope you will enjoy. We've created many different things for you today, and I hope that you will enjoy it as much as we've enjoyed preparing everything for you. So thank you once again for coming, both the MTF experts and our guests, but also all of the beepers who came here from very different offices around the world. So I'm just going to give you a little introduction very shortly, just so that you know what's going to be happening during these 3 days. So most of you got these cards. On the back of the cards you will have the agenda for the entire place, the entire event. If you have any questions, logistic, organizational, please call me, ask me, ping me, team me. Do not use the flow. I don't have my laptop, so just call me. For everyone else, we have this short presentation part in the first section. So it's mostly just for you to get to know who are the people who will be working with you today. So they will tell you a little bit about them, and then we expect you to tell them a little bit about you. So the first part is about inspiration. It's about creativity. It's about innovation. And the only thing we've changed a little bit is because we're going to need some instruments as well, is that the talk from Angers is going to be moved and postponed a bit after the break. So in the back of the room you have some cookies, you have coffee, you have water and juices. Please use them. Don't let them go to waste. And so without any further ado, I would like to present Silvio Kutic, who is our, owner and the mastermind of all of the innovation at Infobip, I would say. So, Silvio, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome everybody once again to our Infobip Pangea campus here in Vodnjan. I'm really happy that we are all here today. Creativity, innovation is our fuel, something that is really important for us. It's our DNA. And today with this event, and I'm really happy that also many Infobippers joined us here today, really interested to participate in this event. We have the occasion to have a few days of creativity, innovation, that's what we are. And I hope that we'll have some also cool ideas after these few days. I would like to thank again Monica from our side. She really worked hard to bring us all here together. Please, one small applause just. I think Andrew also did something. And Magash, Miss Magash also, that she founded the MTF, and we are really happy to have you here today. Thank you. Okay, so I prepared a small, short presentation. It's in another style than we have this corporate style of presentations. A little bit about the story of Infobip, what we are doing today, and some things that matter to us and how we are heading for the future. So first, Monica asked me to show, how we are so large company, what's the main difference between a US company and a Croatian one. Let's say this is American style garage, Croatian style garage. And like every respectable IT company, we started from a garage, 200 meters from here. That's not the picture from the garage, it's more mess in my garage, But let's say you can get a sense like doing business in US, doing business in Croatia is like something like this, it's like a little mess. So about the story, so we started from a garage, and during this year we became, probably the largest IT company here in Vodnjan, and probably the only IT company here in Vodnjan. So, yeah. Our story started in 2002 here from Vodnjan. We started with our first project for the virtual community, which was in a sense a social network, and which gave the ability to citizens from Vodnjan, associations, different businesses to create a profile and communicate through SMS, web, and email with each other. 10th of August 2002, we presented this project it was the City Day, so 10th of August is the City Day here in Vodnjan. We had many people coming on the presentation, the mayors of all the big cities here from Istria, about 100 citizens also has been on this event. But We didn't finish really the application. The platform was not finished for that day. We've been working last night during the whole night and directly went to the presentation. And we said, okay, tomorrow at the presentation, let's present what we have. Let's collect on the entrance the phone numbers of everybody, you know, of all this, especially of the politicians, to have some good info here. And then when I click on this some insignificant link here, everybody will receive a message, welcome to the virtual community, you know. We presented this there, and how I was presented, I just clicked this link, everybody received the message, welcome to the virtual community. And it was like a big successful presentation. After that, we went like for having lunch and a small party with these politicians and all this other crew. But these other people went home, started to click on the website, you know, and after a few hours, the mayor said, guys, are you normal? Everybody already received 100 messages, you know, they've been clicking this link. So this was our first epic fail, you know. After that, so we narrowed a little bit our scope, so we focused just on SMS. We started a new project, Moinet, which failed even before we finished it. Somewhere at that time, beginning 2003, I graduated on the Faculty of Electronic and Engineering in Zagreb, so electrical engineering, and I started to work at the local government-owned company called Electra. I started to work in the field that I was studying for 5 years, but the first day I noticed that this is not something for me, and I've been there from 8 in the morning. At 12 I left for lunch, and I never came back. I went home, I packed my things there, and I took the first bus here to Vodnjan. And here we started to work on a new project called Infobip at the end of 2003, which again, we had the same story. We failed several times, but with few pivots on the technical side, business model side. Somewhere in 2006, we found our product market fit, and we built a communication platform as a service. And in 2006, we founded Infobip. This is Isabel, our co-founder and our CTO, Isa, down there. And yes, this was not our office, because we received this office, but we didn't have internet in the office, but we just came there to take some pictures for Glassistra. Yeah, and from 2006, so, and all these years in the beginning and still today, like innovation, creativity, this is something that we always want to work at the edge of technological possibilities in our industry. And somewhere in 2007, we employed another guy, which was a friend of us from the university, Damir Milotic, who was working from an apartment in Zagreb. And so we've been like a communication platform. Our strategic partners were the mobile operators. And, but the mobile operators at that time, they've been having SMSC like systems for sending messages optimized, let's say for P2P, person to person. They really didn't, it was a new business, this A2P, application to person, so to build other type of use cases by connecting applications to their platforms. And we decided that we will build our own SMSC, which at the time just few companies globally had this technology, and SS7 is like a network that is connected, so all the mobile fixed network operators globally are connected to SSA. It's like a parallel network to internet. So we decided to enter into this technology. We needed 1 year to develop our own SMSC. At that time, just to mention, like this hardware software solution SMSC costed, like the cost was 3, 4, 5, so several million euros. We developed our own. We deployed in an operator in UK, the first one, and it works. And from that moment, so we deployed our SMSC in 100 mobile operators globally. Also, like we had a very creative business model, we've been giving this for free to the mobile operators, which costed like $5 million, you know. But with a revenue share, so we will share a part of their success also with these new functionalities. With the years going on, so this was in 2007, 2008, around 2010, you know, that there were like an exponential growth in this type of application-to-person SMS. And so all these global operators began to exchange like really massive amounts of SMS together, and like a lot of spam, scam, phishing attacks on subscribers, and revenue leakages for mobile operators started to happen. So we developed a new concept, so an SS7 firewall, again, and we deployed this in a large mobile operator. And then with this new idea, with this new business and technical model, we started practically a new industry. And today this is a big industry. There are companies doing just this today from this idea that we started in 2010. So all these years in the beginning, but also now, so we always think and how to innovate, how to do some funny things, and we enjoy doing these new things to innovate in our field of where we operate. Everything what we are doing today and everything what we are doing around products, how we are operating every day, is rotating around this one simple statement. It's our vision statement. We create seamless interactions between businesses and people. Basically, we have the idea that we help humans to interact and consume in an easier, quicker, and simpler way various online services. Just high level, I will show you just high level the design of our products. So we started cloud communications, telco integrations. We started to integrate all these OTT channels, so WhatsApp, Viber, Line, all these channels today available. Today we are, let's say, somewhere here with our evolution. So today we think that there is happening a new revolution, how people will, so how humans will interact with various services. Let's say from this changed dramatically, let's say in last 2 decades, from web applications, mobile, desktop applications. And today we think that we are coming to the age of conversational interface, so chat assistants, voice assistants, so conversation powered with, communication powered with artificial intelligence. In June, we are launching our contact center in cloud, which will enable all these technologies to happen for us. And we see the next evolution to be like how humans will interact with different services, to be in like video interaction, augmented reality, virtual reality, and Internet of Things, so the connection of the offline world with to online world. So the integration here will exponentially grow the possibilities of humans to consume different services. Simplified version of our product stack, product and technology stack. So basically we are a platform operating in a multi-sided business model. On one side we have the connectivity things, how we deliver messages, voice, email, and all this stuff. On the other side we have the customers. Mainly our customers are integrating us through APIs, so programmable communications. They are integrated their applications into our cloud. And some of them are using also our customer facing, like Flow, designing various communication models, analyzing data, and so on. Yeah, so like in 2014, we started with this like metric to see, okay, how much of the world's population is using our services. And in 2014, from when we started with this metric, we've been interacting with 27.5%. And last year we interacted with 4.7 billion people, so about 2/3 of the whole global population. Yeah, so like this is money, but like we are not driven by money, we are driven by customer-centric innovation, we are driven by people growth, learning. But this is an interesting data, so I took this from here. But like these are the fastest growing B2B software as a service companies globally in various like verticals. And Infobip needed about 7 years to go from 0 to 100 million revenues. And also I would like to mention, you know, we are the only privately owned and the only company without external funding that are here on this list. Also, very positive here. So now that you are here, so this is our possibility that we will go to the next stage of the development. Our possibility is 0.0006. It's really good, you know, but you know. So like next year we plan to be on $1 billion revenue, and I found this again from the Stanford Entrepreneurship Corner, but it was I tried to find some interesting data. So this is the probability for a US company founded today in US that will reach 1 billion revenues. So 1 out of 1.7. And if you go back on this garage, it's like a little bit more complex here, you know, with all these tools. This is our brand claim, so world connected. Also, yeah, the Pangea campus is like a metaphor. It's like Pangea was the supercontinent that was like 300 million years ago when all the continents were together. And that's for us the place of innovation where all our people from 62 offices globally are coming together here to work together, create new things. This is one pillar of our Worlds Connected. The second pillar is all these technologies happening around that we are building together, putting in one place. And the third pillar of the Worlds Connected claim is like we are connecting our technology, our company, with the communities around us through various programs that we have that we are running here. At the beginning of the year, during our OKR planning, so we had set a few initiatives, and to address all these challenges and to address all these new technologies that are happening. So we decided to build an engineering powerhouse. We are already an engineering company, but in the next 3 years, until the end of 2021, we want to employ 2,000 new engineers. We should work on new things, like 1,000 software developers, 1,000 pre-sales engineers, and also the tech city Vonyan is logical. This is the tech city. So this city was like an important medieval city, and also it's like very important because we are from here. Yeah, but during all these years and the changes here in the historic changes, 1/3 of the city is like empty houses. The population is 3,700 people, and in the next 5 years we plan to bring 370 developers, engineers, to build here a new, let's say, positive mindset and exponential community where practically they will here live, create together, exchange ideas. You'll be able practically to go on the main square, drink a coffee, and talk about new trends in the technology or some new business models. Also, we are very proud, that like knowledge, learning is like an important part here. This is everything what we have. We have the academy here, so everybody that's employed in InfoBip from anywhere in the world first is coming for the academy. They are getting the learning here, and also during all the stay here in InfoBip you get a lot of leadership, mentorship, and a lot of other learning and development programs. InfoBip Sparks, so Monica again, she started InfoBip Sparks here, so it's for these young kids that will soon replace us here, So they are having various workshops, robotics, IT, STEM, so on. Also, one of these many initiatives, so of our pillars, is to work with the fresh graduates or undergraduates, where we offer them internship programs. So we have 2.5 weeks for pre-sales engineers and 9 weeks for the software engineers, and they work on some real world problems here. They learn many things. Some of them also get employed in InfoBip, and we are very proud for these people that these young people are entering our organization, and we are very happy that we can provide them some kind of entrance in the global digital economy through our company's platform. Yeah, and so as everything what we are doing, we say that we are just starting, and please enjoy this event. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah? So, Monica knows Carlos Moedas a bit. Shall I just talk and then you, okay, cool. We're good. So, this was quite a good sort of moment. How long ago was this? I think it was summer 2017. We were invited to literally hack into the parliament with the Music Tech Fest crowd, and we were allowed, and Carlos was up for it, to basically hack into his brain with a Muse headset. It was him and Pascal Lamy, who was head of the World Trade Organization. And to visualize their brain activity in front of 700 VIPs, including Nobel laureates, during question time. So he was really courageous to do that. Of course, he's a very intelligent man, and he was able to answer really tricky questions. They also asked him some mathematical and engineering questions to boot, because he's actually obviously a qualified engineer. And he did brilliantly, but I must say that you don't normally get people positions of, I mean, I would like to see what would happen if you took some of our Croatian politicians and did that with. And not to speak of some sort of American guys. And we don't know if anything would come out. Okay, oops, didn't say that. Basically, this was a fantastic moment. So the person who's holding that is a guy called Chico Teixeira. He's not with us in this series of sessions. Hopefully next time, once we've kind of developed some ideas here at InfoBip, we can also start playing with brain-to-brain communication, because we have managed to make some inroads into that, and I will show you about that. But I must say that I am super, super happy that we are playing with this here at InfoBip, because I think Silvio rather kind of underplayed just how hard it is to do what InfoBip has done from this country here. You cannot even fathom the sort of range of obstacles that you come against, apart from the fact that the law seems to change every Friday. How they managed to build what they've built here is extraordinary. And I will actually be able to tell you, after I've shown you how we kind of hack into brain messaging, I will be able to tell you a little bit about my background, and also for my crowd here, they probably don't know about this, so it might be interesting even for you guys who are familiar with our stuff. But yeah, I am super, super proud that we've been able to work with InfoBip, and that we've been able to gather this kind of phenomenal global community here. So, from us hacking into politicians' brains to, and I mentioned American politicians, and these are some of the good ones. We were super proud in November 2016, which was kind of the end of Obama's presidency. He was asked to guest edit an edition of Wired magazine, and he picked us as one of the future technology frontiers, with Victoria Modesta as our figurehead. This was a complete surprise. I had no idea this was going to happen, and we are still very, very proud that this happened. This is Victoria. That is from one of her famous videos called Cover Flow. She's currently starring in America in a sci-fi series. She is a futurist. She is someone who has huge amount of courage to test drive new kinds of ideas. Someone who was born with a deformed leg, and then at the age of 15, I think she started to campaign to have it taken off and actually use that as a statement, because it was not about having a normal leg. And she's now a fellow of MIT. She closed the Paralympics in London, opened the Paralympics in Rio. She's like a Lady Gaga of the accessibility world. And when we grew to be over, well, we're a community of over 7,000 innovators globally now, but when we grew to be over 500 people in one place making together, I felt that we needed a figurehead that would represent us, and it needed to be female. It needed to be someone who is really, really courageous to test drive new kinds of ideas, and someone who doesn't see things the way that sort of the rest of us see, or rather, sort of the way that normal people would see normal. See, we don't use kind of normal. Nobody is normal. So the way that people kind of would perceive a person like that would be, well, let's create a prosthetic leg that looks like a supposedly normal leg. Well, what's normal? And, I said to her, well, you know what? Actually, why don't we just kind of make several kind of limbs and things? Why don't we turn you into a Shiva? I mean, what's the point? This is an opportunity, and she was very, very aware of that. So in this case, this fantastic fashion tech designer, Anouk Wipprecht, whom we also drag here at one point, designed a prosthetic leg that was creating smoke for the stage, activated by sensors. So another way that Victoria could express herself on stage. And of course, it creates this image, if you have in mind the image of Marilyn Monroe in that white dress that's kind of lifted by the wind. This one creates a similar image, except with a carbon fiber dress, a whole bunch of sensors, and the smoke that creates that effect. So, completely different way to express oneself, to communicate with audiences, which is what artists phenomenally do. Notice just how many women are participating in this. These were our labs in Berlin. We had, this was the first week-long lab that we ran because we realized after a while that sort of hackathons give us the kind of quick-fire ideas, but in order to produce a proper prototype and a proper result that was very experiential, that is something that people can actually really experience the effect of, that we needed to run for a whole week and have really kind of challenging scenarios that where we were enabling people in completely new ways. All of this is to do with communication. Notice how many women, however, and for instance, there's a couple of girls from MIT that Joy Ito sent over. They made a documentary, this is still from the documentary MIT made about us. And that's, she's now in New York, Fanny Fazakas. She's fantastic video artist and hacker and programmer. I mean, people do all kinds of things that tend to double up as engineering, system design, programming, making electronics, very creative sort of designs and outcomes and media, all in one. A lot of our crowd does that. She won the National Video Awards for Hungary, for instance, not thanks to us, thanks to her talent, of course. But we're very proud to support people like that, and we supported her as well. So, but we're talking brain communication. So what our neuroscientist team started to do in Berlin was to start to get Victoria to train to control the lights of her outfit using neurofeedback. And it's absolutely incredible just how quickly that happens. You think that it would take you ages, you think you're going to be absolutely rubbish at it. In really, really quite fast, she was able to start to kind of get into the mood of being kind of blue, and the thing would go blue. It was this kind of principle. And this was something really fantastic because the artist does project their persona and their emotion and their state of mind onto the audience. And this is another way that they can communicate. Now, the great thing about this is that if we now bypassing these kind of bits in between the sort of interfaces, of course we're really big on interfaces, but when you bypass those interfaces, when you go directly from the brain's plasticity really of communication and of expression comes through. And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to really crash sort of the vocal AI versus the voice AI that the Infobip platform is developing, because the two are really focusing on very different things. If you think of voice AI, you will want to normalize, for those of you who are engineers, to detect the actual term. So you want to detect the accent, but you want to be precise in the word that you detect in the voice AI. Whereas in vocal AI, you actually want to detect the emotion and the character. And when you do neural network training with vocal AI, you are actually recreating a persona, a character. And those two are very different. So this is what's really exciting about us sort of exploring it here. Now, further on, some real kind of breakthroughs happened with this sort of brain communication. So again, Muse had said this is opening of Slush. If your Infobip is a sort of unicorn startup, as I call it, and they will be aware that Slush is one of the biggest world conferences of startups and investors, 20,000 people. And we were asked to open Slush, and when I opened the music industry track in 2016. With the keynote, and then they asked me, what would you like to do next year? And I said, what I would like to do is cook up completely new kinds of experiences for a week leading up to Slush, and then open with this kind of mind-blowing thing. Didn't know it was going to be mind-blowing, of course. We just kind of trust the fact that the experts who we work with are so incredible that something incredible always does happen, and it did, and it was really beyond our expectations. So this is Riikka Haninen. She's a blind singer from the Sibelius Institute. She's absolutely phenomenal vocal coach and a massive range and really, really brilliant, very obviously professional as a vocal coach, as a singer, but also very proud to be a blind singer. And first thing we said to her was, Riikka, what do you need? And sometimes the screen goes black. Sometimes where do we get to? Sometimes the screen goes black. So basically, the first thing she said to us was that she couldn't see the audience reaction, and she didn't know how they felt. And I said, "Is there anything we can do about that?" Well, you don't think about it, do you? And this is where the sound could possibly come in, if there were any. You would hear her sing a beautiful song from the Finnish Kalevala. So this was our teaser for Slush, and sometimes the way that you apply technology can be very simple. Sometimes if you read peer-reviewed papers, it's so complex. They've taken it to the kind of level where they can be, they can build on the knowledge of their peers, and they can be recognized by their peers. But in truth, the applicability of something very complex when it comes to everyday use can be extremely kind of just narrow, and sometimes you just need to do something very simple and it makes an enormous difference. In this case, all we had to do was to fit the audience with pulse sensors. And we thought all these kind of investors and all these startups are there to network and they're not going to be interested. It turned out that we had this rock and roll moment of, first there was a rush for the stage. We didn't have enough sensors to fit everybody with. We also had everybody up with their mobile phones filming the entire experience. Basically the wonderful thing was that obviously the pulse was transmitted to Rika, and then she was able to establish a communication with the audience. And performance and singing is actually very, very much about that. It's about the communication. So that wasn't all. Maybe you can turn it down a touch. Oh no, it's fine. It's okay, down now. We're good. So basically, this was what I was just talking about. We had 3 at the time who could come up, and she could feel the beat. But she was also, that's some of the people who were there. But she was also communicated to Yasmin Izdrake. She is a cyborg. She has 3 chip implants, 2 in her wrist, 1 over her heart. The one over her heart can trigger a black page. No, there it is. The one over her heart. It does trigger a X-ray of her heart on stage. So she's able to trigger those with sensors. Built a whole bunch of contraptions where she was also able to, because Rika couldn't see her movement, and she was communicating by movement. There's another reason for this. Yasmin herself has been suffering all her life from the inability to raise her voice or to sing. She has a psychological impairment, which she talks about also openly, and therefore the chips in her wrists can activate alarms or in an emergency. And in fact, what happened with her was that she was admitted to hospital for a really serious cancer scare, and this was in Sweden. She's Swedish. And she was prevented from having treatment, saying that her staff was interfering with their equipment. Now, RFID chips are fully legalized in Sweden. She's doing something legal, and she's doing something that's necessary for her to communicate. Now, because of this, when we were asked to hack the parliament, we actually put her up on stage, and she's really fierce in a way. She kind of tells people how things should be, and she did the very first cyborg rights pitch at the European Commission. You will see her interacting with some devices that were built specially to generate part of the performance. But of course, we're talking about communicating directly from the brain, and with the Muse headset here mounted on Rika. Well, right from the beginning, we wanted to take forward what happened in Berlin. And this system comes from clinical trials for people who have anxiety attacks. So what clinicians normally do is they allow people who who tend to have anxiety attacks to put a Muse headset on, visualize their brain activity, and then realize when the pattern of their brain changes, because it tends to change before the attack. So if you actually capture it early enough, you can start to train to control it, and it works. And so instead of this time, we actually got it changed to move the musical scale. So with training, and it would take people in the labs about 2 hours or more, people were able to start to go up and down the musical scale. Now 2 hours is actually nothing. Think about how long it takes you to learn to play piano or something, because of course there you have to train your muscle memory, and you have to train a whole other part of your body. So our brain is incredibly plastic. But then Rika put the Muse headset on with this system, and she was able to play instantly. She was playing music directly from her brain without training. And these guys just went, what just happened? And the fact was that we didn't know if it was because she has been blind since birth, which is a perfect pitch, or whether there's a combination of things. But it turns out that someone who in the mechanical world was considered less able-bodied is now in this world of brain-computer interfaces and communications much more able-bodied than the rest of us. Right? So there was a seminal moment. So where does all this come from? Nowhere? No, somewhere. How many of you know this stadium? Yeah, Poljud, that's right, that's Poljud. It was designed by a man called Boris Magaš. Maybe some of you have heard of him. That's him standing there, actually, it's my father. I work with my parents. I'm part of the Italian community here, down the road, not very far from here. I was educated in the Italian schools. We are a very big Italian community in this zone. It used to be Italy until 1945. And also it was an area in dispute for a long time after that. NATO used to patrol because there was a kind of thing, is it Italy, is it the old Yugoslavia or whatever. So very strong Italian presence. I was brought up on Dante and Petrarca, Boccaccio, and I still recite it occasionally because it gets ingrained in you, a bit like Shakespeare does with Brits. And it was phenomenal education. Actually, I am super privileged because we were sent on field trips to the most incredible thing from Pompeii, Rome, Florence, up to the Alps. We were sent every summer to summer camps in Italy, and we were educated on Italian books. So very, very lucky to have had this kind of education. I can also count just how many of my friends and colleagues, bearing in mind we were the generation, much like the founders of Infobip, who actually were not born in the right moment, considering that there was a serious war going on when we were kind of building ourselves as individuals. Ginger just arrived, yay! She made it! Ginger was stuck last night in London because of delays and what have you. So, this is another reason why I'm very proud to be here. And right from an early age, because both my parents are architects, my father is head of theory of architecture at University of Zagreb, and you will find, I have this kind of, actually, Andrew will tell you, I have this photograph I'm very proud of. There was a Steve Jobs book that came out, and my father's book that came out, and the main library on the main square in Zagreb had one window with Steve Jobs, one window with my father, and I was standing in the middle, which was kind of appropriate. So I was involved. I was actually written into the design of the School of Construction Engineering in Rijeka at the age of 10. It's nuts. We were working on designs on my father's engineering design, and this is why he was able to innovate with this stadium. I don't know how many of you know, this stadium held the world record in the largest curved, unsupported, or rather not supported with pillars, roof spanned for 10 years, between 1979 and 1989. So, and I think Renzo Piano took the mantle. This is a system called Mero. It's a German piece of innovation that's absolutely phenomenal. It's like an atomic structure. This German company had the vision to, in 1974, buy a first supercomputer. I suspect that supercomputer probably took the size of a room and had less power than any one of your mobiles. But anyway, it was a supercomputer at the time. And the first thing they did that was not part of, this was designed originally to support hangars and warehouses. The first application was in the stadium in Berlin, where they covered one part of it with a straight roof, like this, with a structure. And my father said, hang on a minute, I can calculate this. I can calculate this to do a curve. And I know that if I do a curve, because of course these are all cancelling forces, I'm sure that all of you who are engineers understand this, I can also do a curve which will be completely self-supported. And for the first time you have a football stadium where everybody has a great view, nobody has a pillar in front, and you can hang, this is the journalist's cabin, right at the top, have bird's eye view of the whole football pitch. And not to talk about a whole ton of other innovations. This was featured on when the National Geographic, they made a cover of an article about this region in, goodness, somewhere in around 1990, 89 perhaps. This was the opening spread as how modern the thinking of the people is, and has been recognized hugely. This is me at MoMA, in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, just around Christmas, I believe. MoMA commissioned to remake the model of this. These are some of the original drawings. My mother will be around tomorrow. She was working on this. We were all working. It was cottage industry. It was like you say, garage. Our flat was just a flat in Rijeka, was completely covered in drawings and things like this. This is my background. So that was that was the opening when you walked into the MoMA, and the retrospective of it's called Concrete Utopia, massively successful exhibition, really, really widely kind of written about and recognized. I'm sure everybody is aware, but also I had a call from the Getty Foundation in San Francisco, who said, can you send me your father's photographs can you authorize your father's photographs of the Museum of Revolution in Sarajevo, or National Museum of whatever it's called now, please help me. Because they are now funding the reconstruction of it. So we are being, in this zone, our stuff is being recognized. To give you a background story of where my trajectory took me, I was so bloody minded. I wanted to go to London. I wanted to do design. I managed to get into one of the top colleges in London without any money whatsoever. It was war here. My father's wage could get you, my father's monthly wage, I think, could get you by for a week, maybe, in London at best. I remember that it was costing me £50, British pounds, per day to study in 1992. I didn't have it. So anyway, won't go into like violin stories and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, you can take the violins out later. This was my graduation project from the Royal College of Art in London. It was a first newspaper for the digital age. And I kind of gambled because I was in a massively competitive college, and they were going to throw me out back into a war zone at the time. So I just decided that first of all, I was inspired by the fact of misinformation. Back then, fake news, and how news was shaped to represent what was happening back here and how it was portrayed. And I wanted to have something that was had a better overview, that was more objective. Also, how information and how communication was handled in 3D when people actually handled a piece of communication, how they opened it, how they folded it, what they saw first, and then combined with how do you use computer technology to make best use of this stream of data, which was big data. I was dealing with big data since 1994. This was a reworking of an edition of The Independent. Now I want to take you through what it takes. I said my father's roof held for 10 years the record of the largest roof span, curved roof span. I will take you through what it takes for innovation to catch on, for people to really kind of understand it and apply it. This was a reworking of an edition of The Independent in order to test drive my assumptions of how I was going to put news together really, really quickly, but for a biggest impact. I did 100 actual editions of The Independent every single day for 100 days in order to hone in on how the information can be displayed. These are some of those covers. Just pay attention to what that looks like. This is my graduation project. It was Derek Jarman's death. Derek Jarman, big gay icon, fantastic artist in Britain. It was the only newspaper at the time that dared put this on the cover. Now, I reworked it as a giant sort of poster-like thing and created this modular cover that was super fast to assemble. They had terrible systems for newspapers at that time, and reduced it to half the size that it usually that previously was. It was just enormous broadsheet papers that nobody could read on public transport because you just couldn't open them. But of course, you had to use the same printing presses. So the way to do it was to halve it, but to make it look really authoritative. And this was 1994. This is The Independent. In 2016, again, another icon on the cover, another icon who just died on the cover. This is how long it really took for them to take it on board. Of course, what happened to me was that I landed immediately on my pre-private view. I didn't even see my show, the rest of my show. Financial Times said, come in on Monday. We want you on a design of a completely new section of the paper. And I said, how are we going to fix the papers? He said, we'll fix the papers. Fine, great. This was some of my, I did tremendous amount of stuff. I helped the AFT during the global expansion. This was completely different ballgame. We're talking about digitization, big data, all kinds of things that people had no clue how to deal with back in the 90s. And I was dealing with Getty Images, Reuters and stuff, and I was thinking, hang on, there are better systems to do this. This was my passion. I was like, how am I going to fix this? I also ended up being editor of, launched several things for them: Mastering Management, Mastering Enterprise, Mastering Finance, and finally Creative Business. These are some of mine. I was editor of this. When I left, I was in a very nice, cushy job position. I was, I could have just kind of progressed with my career, but I am not driven by career-y kind of traditional career-y things. Did anybody notice? So basically, I actually took the opportunity to do Futures for Nike instead. So I started doing two jobs for a while. I was editing. I was basically working like two lots of working days, and this kind of hasn't changed since really. 16 hours is normal. These were Futures for Nike. Some of those futures materialized. So. Some of the ideas we had, for instance, modular garments and modular shoes, we wanted them to embed. This is a Mark Newson design from 2004, which was totally groundbreaking. It's been relaunched. It was briefly relaunched in 2010, and now it's been relaunched again. There were 7 futures concepts that we did for them, and I think 5 out of 7 materialized later. Things started to move faster in innovation. We realized that the tools that were available to us were actually getting cheaper. And so some of these kind of novel ideas could be test-driven more cheaply, and things started to move. This was one of the ones that they didn't take on. We said, this is Amy Mullins. She could beat any fastest male runner with her prosthetics. So she was banned from competing in 1998 against able-bodied men. We suggested to Nike that they should think of a shoe as something that doesn't start at the ankle, and it's not something that's just on the heel, something that can start anywhere. Or does it matter? If you're thinking of new technology for walking, this is new technology for walking. they said, oh, the disability, the futures group went, that's great, we love it. And the marketing department went, disability is not our market. And we're like, it's not about disability, come on. So, oh, I didn't know it was going to do that. Sorry, this is complete kind of like surprise. That's Amy Mullins, 1998. In 2000, 2001, we say to Nike, you should be doing that. This is us at Music Tech Fest in 2016. If some big corporate is not going to play ball, we'll just go and do it ourselves. This is my motto. And we did it. So 2003, yeah, this is interesting. So then we come to Apple. So first thing that happens, let's see if it works. Let's go back one. Okay. Oh, yeah. It doesn't like it, does it? Let's do. Start again. Again. Okay. It doesn't want. It wants to make its animation, and then we see this. Okay. So, having seen big data, I was a self-taught programmer. I sat down in 2000. I was still editing. I was doing Futures for Nike, and I started to program. And I just thought, you know what? There are so the ways that we are having this kind of stream of data coming down. And every day I have 4 global editions to get out of the paper. And if I miss something, I will have a hole in the page. And it's all being ISDN'd at that time to 4 different printing sites around the globe. And I thought there's a much better way to deal with data, and there's much better ways in which we can build these systems. This is something I wrote as a shell in 2003, as some of the InfoBip founders will confirm. Everything south of Paris was on 56K modems. I think Roberto was making sound impressions of what that sounded like at the time. It's like a musical instrument. And of course, loading big content was a serious issue. Everything looked awful as a result. Everything was just kind of text and just tiny little kind of buttons. The way, of course, to solve that, it was to both create a system that's, if you wanted to create a dynamic system for loading, it had to be something that's a shell that will receive content on the fly, you know, no Ajax at the time and stuff. It also had to anticipate what the user was going to do so that it doesn't load unnecessary content. And of course, this is what I created, but this was, at that time, being flicked. The images were being flicked with a mouse. This got me headhunted by Apple. Hello. Go forward. Nope, we're out. Okay, try again. That's it. Okay. Which looked like, well, iTunes looked like this, like a spreadsheet. So we turned music into a spreadsheet at that moment when music went digital. And of course, I said to them, you know, they said, oh, you know, but Steve is like saying we're a hardware company and software is just there to sell the hardware, and really we don't have kind of a huge amount, unless it's film software, which he was interested in. You know, how are we going to, it takes us 2 weeks to change a background color at the moment. So, you know, how are we going to do this kind of dynamic stuff? We love the stuff that you're doing, but how are we going to do this? And I said, you know, what you should be thinking about is, okay, I understand your front end can't be touched because it's just too difficult at this moment, and you need to make sure that all the downloads work and all stuff. But go to an area beyond that that's completely experimental and ask people to kind of submit crazy ideas, and it doesn't matter if it's glitchy, because then someone who enters your store is not going to go, here's the song I want, 99 cents, out. Instead, after half an hour, they will have a whole bunch of stuff that they've tagged that they thought was interesting, and then they'll have a shopping basket that's full of like interesting music instead. But it doesn't have to be perfect, it can be glitchy. Well, that might sound familiar now, but I didn't write CoverFlow itself. This was the precursor to CoverFlow, though. So that's what they went and got CoverFlow. You know what CoverFlow looked like. This is one that you probably haven't seen. It's a version of the Apple Newton that was never published. It was designed by Ross Lovegrove Studio. So my co-founder of the company that launched all of this, Peter Russell Clark, he was on this project. And he was, at that time, working with Jonathan Ive, who was, at that time, not in the senior position that he's now, obviously, back in those days. You might recall what made a huge success for Apple when the iMacs were launched in bubblegum translucent colors. And suddenly, this personal computer became a lifestyle item. And you can see where it came from. Sometimes you do innovation that, at that time, we all know that Apple Newton was way before its time. It didn't have the bandwidth, didn't have the sort of the infrastructure around it that would allow it to be the kind of genial idea that it was. But some of the elements, first of all, it's a well-known fact that it was the precursor of that, which happened, again, much, much later. And then Peter moved in 2006 on the design of the first one of those, and then he's been there ever since, and that's him there. This is the Apple patenting ecosystem. I didn't go, I've been asked 4 times. So, this is the sort of struggle of innovation. First of all, it requires recognition. It requires from large organizations to have the vision, but also to have the guts and understand the moment. And some of the measures that we've implemented with our crowd are actually very much about understanding that moment, understanding the early adopters, and when the early adopters and the infrastructure around them is ready to go with these kinds of things. That's my patent. I funded it myself. You can't really hear it. Co-owned with Cyril Laurier, a fabulous programmer and part of our community as well. Our CTO and whatever else is also successful in his own right. This was a system for analyzing the smallest cultural unit of music, because one of the biggest problems in analyzing music was that it inherited its techniques from audio signal processing, and some of it from speech, but not a huge amount, because it's not really that related, even though we can use our systems to detect speech really, really well. In fact, I matched in iTunes all kinds of problems they had with management, because I detected all of the recorded stuff that had either speech or music, any duplicates, anything. So it would pick up on everything. And in fact, we were very good at kind of finding copyright infringement and all kinds of things like that. But the problem is that when it comes to music, it is a cultural construct, and there's more to it. Of course, cultural construct you can also read as it is also a medium for expression and communication. And it's very, very important at that. It has all of the elements of big data, cloud computing, all of this sort of problems that all the big industry now faces, for instance, has been also already test-driven in the music industry. And it's a great, very safe environment to test-drive new ideas. That got me headhunted by the European Commission, and cut long story short, as byproduct of, I was director of the Future of Music, roadmap for the future of music tech, if you like, with some fantastic professors who are in that field. We managed to open it up to the creative industries, opening up to culture, to society, to diversity, rather than it being kind of stuck in this one place of just a sort of narrow view. And Music Tech Fest was born. This is us with the London Symphony Orchestra in London, with the Brainwave Quartet. Started in 2012. People said it was impossible to do what we were proposing to do. That actually turned out, when I said we were going to put creativity at the heart of these events, huge amount of people sort of said, hang on a minute, then we are in there. And it was all the big guys like BBC, EMI, early Spotify, early Shazam, and all the rest of it. So this was, as I say, this particular photo is from 2012 from the Barbican in London. And if this will you can see a little bit of these early kind of experiments with instrument making, with finding new ways to work with objects, with physical presence. We said right from the beginning, what we wanted to do was bring people in a physical space and then see how we can interact through objects, through connected objects, through connected data and objects, etc., creating new kinds of interfaces, new kinds of mediums for communication. So some of these went on to get recognition from the Ars Electronica, for instance. Some of them went on to be funded somewhere. Just wonderful kind of connections, creating wonderful connections and long-term projects between people who are from all parts of the world.
But perhaps because the headmaster was also a pipe smoker.
So, large scale, small scale, all kinds of ways in which one can generate together. This was very much the sort of let's skip to the next one, because so we were invited then to go all over the world. We were twice in London, then we were invited everywhere. This was Wellington, New Zealand, of course, crossing cultures, no problem. These guys are actually hip-hop artists, but they were dressed in the sort of Maori gear there, Polynesian instruments. They brought those, and some of those were hacked, and they wanted to have more of them hacked. There was just such cool things going on. Like they would block them from one side, it would double amplify, you could beatbox through, it would feed synthesized music through them, and you could beatbox with them from the other end. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. They would just go totally crazy for them. As I mentioned, some recognition that came from some of the people involved. This is a fantastic one. Robertina Šebinić, she's from Slovenia, very recognized artist now. This is a huge tank of jellyfish. Jellyfish communicate via chemical reaction. And she would translate the data from that into sound. The sound would be then communicated to her. She would communicate back and basically create a communication system with a communication system that involves a biochemical process, let's say, with biological systems. We are really, really big on, we're really big on inclusion and not having, it really doesn't like it, does it? Okay, I'm going forward again. Let's try. Just be patient. We're really big on this. The fact that our community is so diverse and that we insist, we had to get a special visa for Ahmad to come to Berlin. We have a community in the Palestine as a result. It's really lovely. They send us kind of their pictures in our t-shirts and stuff from there. But to have Rani, and it was Rani actually who organized this, he really wanted to do this. He's someone who works in bridging across, literally bridging between these sort of scenarios, and have two of them on stage together was a big deal. And I sort of, at that time, refused some invitations from America because there were some issues with immigration. This is Lou Edmonds from Public Image Limited on a hacked guitar, and Terry, who's an old member of our community and also a performer and really, really active in London. 3D printer on drums. Some hacked Wiimotes as instruments. This is 8 o'clock on a Saturday night at the London Symphony Orchestra in London, and we turn up with something that we think is going to be terrible cacophony. But the audience loved it, and the reason why they loved it was because there was this, I mean, I had to think about it, why this was. This was cooked up that afternoon, but it was the immediacy of expression. It was the immediacy of communication, something that we had lost with post-production in music, which is another art form, but it's a different art form. We have some musicians in the room, some people we spoke about last night about the power of this expression of music, particularly kind of some of these types of music that work really well as a gig, we were discussing kind of hardcore, and you're gonna hear some more really incredible stuff about loud music later from CJ, who I can see sitting also at the back. And you guys have already spoken, haven't you? This is something that's really, really worth thinking about, something that's been lost and people really want it. And then, of course, kids. You work with kids. We know how important this is. This is us, again, this is 2014 or thereabouts. Large groups of kids with some fantastic facilitators. Some of them are in the room. If you look at the kind of reaction of kids, from kids to something they created in 3 hours, and then they're put on the main stage. Again, this is at the Barbican, the main stage, in front of people. They're super scared. But what happens as a result of having to actually communicate what it is that they created to audiences is that they get a huge sense of achievement and really builds their confidence. And then afterwards, all the parents were coming to us, how did you do this? Our kids now want to be engineers. There's an additional element when you communicate what you've created. And this is what always happens with us. Some fabulous people who gathered, they decided to gather together we were at Microsoft Research in New England, and they assembled all the people from MIT, Harvard, McGill, etc., all the Ivy League colleges, and said, all right, we're inspired by what we've just seen at the Music Tech Fest. What we want to do is to create a manifesto for it. So they sat down and started writing a manifesto. These are kind of people like, Georgina Bourne, who's the head of music at the University of Oxford, and people like Jonathan Stern, who's the author of the history of the MP3, etc. Really incredible people, and of course put a challenge forward for me and for us as to how we're going to prove that actually we are pivotal in the middle of all of these areas of knowledge, because we can be the center for experimentation for all of this. Turns out this is not a complete list. This is an old one, I think. There's over 150 organizations who have invested in us, and they range from anything like from Volvo through the sort of public funded people through major kind of, not all the academia is listed on here. It's not possible. We have like 600. Of course, some of the sort of obvious ones, and media, etc., is really across the board. And I created a method and a system which we test drove with public funding. It was called Music Bricks. It was massively successful. It just actually ended up creating a problem, inverse problem, that when you have funding to run a particular type of project, if you are doing 160%. Instead of 100%, you have a 60% extra to fund. And so I had to go out and get huge amount of extra funding in order to support this community that was just really thriving. And there were, instead of 2 products, we had 11. So that created a problem in itself. And I still have a problem creating enough continuity to capture all of the ideas and all of the projects that come out. But to actually reduce the timeline from 0 to hero, if you like, from the first toolkit ready here, completely new tools. We created new boards, called a Riot board for low latency, gesture-driven applications. Suddenly, because we reduced latency for the first time, we unleashed all kinds of possibilities. So basically, the product patenting was just kind of, it just rocketed. That's just some of the, he goes again. Some of the guys who have had follow-on funding, recognition, startups, etc. There's way too many people to talk about here. Hopefully you will meet some of them again in the future. There was Chico, who I mentioned earlier, Neurofeedback. They got €1 million follow-up funding from our incubation. Hakan's got multiple awards, but he was here, Innovators Under 35 by MIT. This was the patent that I mentioned, 30 Under 30 Entrepreneurs by Forbes. Matan, some of you have seen these guys before. Let's see if it will listen to me. I'm showing that, you saw, it flashed by, the award. That was Mairead McGuinness, Deputy of the Parliament, Deputy Head of Parliament, and Carlos Moedas, Commissioner for Innovation. The reason why that award is significant, and pay attention to this because it's actually quite important what's happened since. It was the very first award of that kind that was ever awarded to someone from the creative industries. And I graduated in design communications and specialized in system design. This was unheard of. They were called soft skills. Despite the fact that I tell the European Commission, do you realize that King in Sweden already in 2017 was twice as big as Volvo? Not paying attention to these kinds of things. So, quite something. And that was something I'm very, very proud of, because the creative industries have since flourished in terms of how much recognition, how much importance is paid to what is created. Of course, very, very strongly enabled by ICT, so digital technologies and stuff, but communications, design, gaming, all of those things are now being seen as the driving forces that can actually inform the rest of the industry about how to operate in the space of big data, and in how you actually link now in the networked society all of the capabilities inside big businesses, etc. This has really, let me just do something, doesn't want to do it. This has really, this also got me to advise to the G7 leaders on this, and, oh, okay. In the I7, Innovation 7, and we managed to, I'm very happy to say, push human-centric AI as a main recommendation, which wasn't a given, it wasn't a norm. You would think that this would be a priority, but it wasn't. And it was then when the Canadians took over the Italians as the heads of G7, their fantastic Minister of Innovation, who's Sikh, really, really wonderful, kind of Gandhi-like figure, gathered everybody together, said, we have to pass this. This is very important. So my unique position has been to experiment at the grassroots, to see what's possible at the human level in terms of human empowerment, in terms of how we grow people and add to their gamut of abilities, how they can grow themselves as people, because we are very plastic as individuals. I keep saying that when people tell me we're going to lose jobs because of robotics and AI, I'm going, no, they're not seeing it at all. Actually, that's the old school thinking that, you know, the machine comes over and then it becomes kind of a conveyor belt and production process. It's a completely different thing. What systems are now, what the network systems are now allowing us to do is to train ourselves completely different ways, and we grow our brains in different ways and create new kinds of connections. And this is proving to be just phenomenal for me. So kids, of course, are being our future. When I was sent by the European Commission to advise the Brazilian government to broker a deal between the Alliance of Internet of Things Innovation in Europe and their Câmara Brasileira, the IoT, I actually ended up realizing that there was an opportunity there where they have 10% illiteracy. 10% illiteracy in a 200 million country that's as big as a continent is huge, huge. Sao Paulo state is surrounded by areas that have children, basically called children in vulnerability areas. And if we do one smartboard per child, which is super cheap these days, it's not like one laptop per child, which was difficult to bring the price down on. If you do this, in 15 years, you have a generation of engineers, and this is what we want to aim at. This is why microbit being introduced in creation schools, for instance, is a really great idea, and we need more of that. And of course, what Infobip is doing with kids. This is one of the kids in Stockholm, one of our youngest DJs, and we come to. And LJ will be. Oh, sorry, we are having a bit of a kind of temperamental system. That is LJ's kid. LJ, where are you? LJ? Okay, she's getting ready. She's going to be talking later. But that's one of our youngest MTFers in Stockholm. Sorry, well, that was your child on the screen there. Oh, that's you on the screen there. So that's appropriate too. And there's a few people here. So are women in the lead These were some of our main women in the lead. Danica Kragic, world-known professor of robotics and AI, Robin. Anouk Wipprecht, who designed that smoke dress. Imogen Heap. Kelly's here. Where's Kelly? You'll be hearing from her this morning. I'm not going to speak for other people about their work. They are doing phenomenal things which you really need to hear about. LJ is here now. There she is. She'll be speaking to you a bit later. And Ginger is here, and she just managed to come in. I'm so pleased to see that. These were people in the lead of different areas. For instance, the lead of blockchain. Imogen ran a week-long lab on blockchain. We are really big on registering IP as an intellectual property in real time, and when artists are creating it, and doing completely streamlined systems where you track everything that's been done, so you end up with, when you have a finished project or a product, you don't have to start negotiating with lawyers at that point. You have everything already embedded in the system. This is kind of pretty crucial for all future innovation. We've been test driving these, doesn't want to do it. Eva Kaili, member of European Parliament. Some of you may have heard of her. If you haven't heard of her, you should. Phenomenal. You know, there are politicians and politicians. Sometimes they're phenomenal. Eva is advocating new technologies, particularly in the decentralized systems area, particularly sort of women in technology also, but a whole bunch of things, regulation, the right kind of regulation for new technologies. She accepted to be our woman in the lead of politics. So we have a few more, but we were super proud of that. How did we scale? We'll try again. It seems to kind of have a mind of its own. Let's see if we can do that. How do you scale this community now that we have attention of all of the industry and all of the European policy? I was basically, we created Industry Commons Foundation, which is the idea of, to put it simply, Intel inside. That any innovation you do, you have to think of it as Intel inside, and actually it's what Infobip is doing, very much so. So the idea being that we gather all of the industry in one place, and we see which bits can kind of filter through to all of the different verticals or rather silos. You know, like how industry operates in kind of very, very determined silos. You can kind of hear me talk about that online if you're interested, because I can talk about it for a long time, because it's a very important issue that we are kind of operating very separate ways. And this crowd particularly is finding completely new ideas. If you take two different ideas from two completely different sectors, for instance, you just come up with fantastic new ideas and new markets that open up. So this is really worth doing. So we have some incredible things on people on the steering board, because in Sweden, when you do this foundation, it's the people on the steering board who are personally responsible. It's not, they don't just pay lip service to the foundation. They are actually personally responsible for the running of the foundation. Bror has been advisor on innovation to Juncker until his retirement. He's now part of us. They've ported the entire Open Innovation Strategy Group with Martin Curley, who was the co-founder of that. He was head of Intel Labs Europe for all his life. David Gann is VP Innovation for Imperial College in London. Some of the fantastic women here, Tobias, some of you have met. He's in charge of innovation for the Swedish National Space Agency, which is part of the European Space Agency. Some of the women that are amazing. Magdalena Kaili is actually in the office of Eva Kaili, and she's the founder of the European Observatory, Law Observatory. She's a lawyer, Law Observatory of New Technologies. So again, this is about new regulation. And some of these women here run amazing things. She was head of the RISE, or Swedish Interactive Institute, and she's now head of the Swedish Media Council, so very much in charge of how you deal with, for instance, new challenges such as fake news and things that are now media is kind of central to, and head of Innovation Pioneers, and head of Kista Science City and Urban ICT Arena, which has ABB, Ericsson, and Suzanne works with IKEA, Volvo, and so anyway, it's pretty incredible. That guy you might know. He's in the room. that's where we're scaling this to, but these are the people, really. Like those guys have got the power and the might, whatever, but these guys have got the power to actually transform where we're going to, and some people in the room know these people because they were all part of the big 90 people lab in Stockholm. That was absolutely crazy. I started with 30 people, it grew to 90 because phenomenal talent just contacted me and said, we want to be part of this. These are the guys. And these photographs actually were taken in a very, very, where's Andrea? Andrea Cerrato? Ciao, 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 dove sei? There he is at the back with the cap on. Taken by Andrea using a very special technique which he can tell you about. And this is also something that you will be seeing and taking further. This is us at ZKM, Center for Art and Media in Karlsruhe. Very known organization if you're in that area, very recognized. And this is, again with the Muse headset, interacting with the Space Data Simulator, which is based on Kelly's work on Kepler's Music of the Planets, and simulator designed by Johanna, with generative music designed by Andrea. Some of the stuff they've taken now further. It's been activated now by the focus from the brain. So this is actually NASA data that's measuring distances between planets, but the speed of rotation and the sort of patterns that you're seeing are, as we found out, as it turns out, very much a signature of individual people's brains. When you start to interact with a complex system like that, the number of parameters allow it to become a signature to each person, because each person is so different. And you'll be able to see some of that. You'll also be able to see some Moonbounce performance. Where's Martine Nicole? Maybe preparing also for tonight. She's doing a talk about this, so we'll not go at length. This is Imogen Heap sending her voice to the moon. I'm hoping that most of you are going to be with us this evening. We're actually live through the Dwingeloo telescope in Holland from 10:30 onwards, sending our voices or sounds. And I believe the InfoBip sound branding is also going to the moon and back. That's the plan. Of course, what we are thinking about doing is examining other ways in which we can sort of send communications to the moon. These are the moonshot people, so some more people from our labs, but again, I must emphasize, the reason why we do moonshots with this crowd is because this crowd is qualified to do this kind of moonshots and really kind of aim for the impossible. So we always say we don't predict the future, we invent it. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Monica. This is the story of Dadabots. What is Dadabots? We're a band, a metal band, hell-bent on the annihilation of the human race. The end is near. But we started, before we were a metal band, as a hackathon team at hackathons like Music Hack Day and Music Tech Fest. At these events, there were technologists that had APIs and programming libraries that we could use to make algorithmic music, like the Echo-Nest Remix, which could take a song, split it into beats, and then you could do algorithms like shift the beats around to turn it into a swing. And we used this kind of technology to make SoundCloud bots. These bots would go around SoundCloud, spidering, finding songs, remixing it. For example, this one's called Auto Chiptune. It would take a song like this one and turn it into chiptune, auto chiptune. And we could do this hundreds of times a day until SoundCloud banned us several times. Also in our tool shed was signal processing. And we could do techniques like splitting a spectrogram into harmonic and percussive components. And so, we're metal musicians trying to learn these techniques to make more extreme versions of music. I'm like, okay, bots, remix bots, maybe this could be used for world peace. If every musician collaborated with every other musician, there'd be no wars. Zoom ahead to 2015, neural style transfer. This was kind of when there was an explosion of neural network techniques being used by artists. And this blew my mind, seeing the Mona Lisa in the style of Picasso and Monet. And I knew I had to quit my job. But Mona Lisa in the style of Google Maps. It's great. So the first thing I did, try to make pizza fire. Could I apply this technique to animated GIFs? Yes. Fire plus pizza. Pizza fire, that's what it looks like. Also in the tool shed of neural networks is for creative uses is the recurrent neural net, which is good for writing text. Like, if you train it on Wikipedia, it'll generate nonsense like, naturalism and decision for the majority of Arab countries' capital head was granted by the Irish language by John Clare in Imperial Japanese Revolt. Total nonsense. But it makes things that have structure to it. Like this is trained on source code. That looks like source code. Here's more. And so what else is a sequence? Not just text, but also audio. Audio is a sequence. And these same nets can be just, you just throw audio at them and then you can impersonate Barack Obama.
This night I have happy to share with you a small announcement about the start of They launched today their website where you can create a digital copy of your books. They only need you to record 1 minute of audio. This is just the beginning and they are working hard to improve the results.
Totally fake video. The downside to this technology is fake news, but the upside is really creative things. That's what got me excited. And the state of the art right now in text synthesis is pretty realistic.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again. The fake lawyer from New Orleans.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught. The fake lawyer from.
And this is end-to-end neural, this gives us a kind of expressive ability. We can change these things. Like you can change the accent from.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught.
From a U.S. accent to a British accent.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is. The fake lawyer from New Orleans is.
I'm like, nice. Okay, this is working for speech. And speech research is always a little bit ahead of music research. So we're like, all right, let's try this on Kurt Cobain. We get some Kurt Cobain acapellas. Let's see what happens. So I thought the first result we were going to get was noise or silence or something, but no. Instead, it was screaming about Jesus. I knew we were onto something. So that was our hackathon project at South by Southwest. And luckily, one of the judges was this guy from Amazon. And he liked the project so much that he gave us a whole bunch of Amazon credits to keep running these nets on GPUs. And this kind of neural network stuff requires some heavy-duty supercomputing. But when used for art, we can create things like this. This is a collaboration we did with the beatboxer Reaps One, taking this speech synthesis stuff a step further. He was making a documentary at the time, and he wanted to do a duet, so we trained a neural net on his beatboxing. It imitates his style, but it doesn't really totally sound like him. It's sort of chaotic. I'll just play it for you. Thanks. Okay, nice. We can do speech synthesis. We can do beatbox synthesis. Can we synthesize whole bands? Let's try the Beatles. So as a neural network trains, at first, it's not very good at it. It's not very good at imitating. Sounds like noise. A few hours later, you start hearing it's like, okay, that sounds something in there. Maybe a day later. Okay, some kind of like Beatles blob. And this was trained on 30 of their songs. But then a couple days later, All right, nice. I'm hearing singing, I'm hearing guitar, drums. I don't hear composition, but it sounds like it's getting better and better. All right, I think we're onto something. Let's try a different genre. Let's try skate punk. So when we trained it on this, we actually heard song structure. So we're going to show you this video. We didn't make this video. Someone on YouTube made this video. Another important thing to note, when it generates lyrics, it actually doesn't know English. It's all nonsense. But that doesn't stop the human brain from trying to figure out what it's saying. Okay, so we're metal musicians, right? So now we have to try it on metal. And this is what came out. We tried it on black metal, and this is the needle drop, a video of him listening to it.
That's really weird. It makes me smile because I'm actually kind of amazed by it. It obviously doesn't sound like much and is not that inspiring from a compositional standpoint.
So this actually went viral. Of all the things we did, the black metal. And so we're like, all right, people on the internet like this. Let's put out a new record once a month. And let's make more and more extreme versions of metal. So like this one. This was... So we started perfecting this aesthetic of making an imitation album. We try to capture the aesthetic of the original band. We take their album covers and run it through a neural style transfer process. We take their song titles and run that through generative Markov chains. It became very hilarious for us. And this one too. We tried a bunch of genres, but just extreme metal seemed to fit it the best. Oh well. And then recently we tried. Good point to say. Most of the time when we're generating these things, maybe 1 in 20 songs it generates is actually listenable. Usually the song just collapses into silence or it gets stuck in a drone, and there's like no point in listening to it. So to make these albums, we've been curating. We listen through, find pieces that sound good, and like, okay, here's the album. But on this net, which was trained on technical death metal band Archspire, everything it made was listenable. And so that means we could just let it play 24/7 and live stream it. And so it's literally running on a server right now, on a Linux server somewhere in the States, generating this 24/7, and we can tap into it. And let's listen to it right now. Whoa.
Does that have more thumbs down and thumbs up?
No, it's 18,000 thumbs up.
DJ, I just want to say the comments, because they're live on the side, are absolutely amazing to go through and read.
Yes, the comments are hilarious. We've seen things like people that are coming in and like worshiping their new AI overlords. They're like, this is why AI sucks, and others like, this is why I love AI. I don't know.
Oh, it's a Cyrillic.
Yeah, there's a huge chunk of the audience is Russian speaking.
You don't say. Stoce violoncello. This is what is it, a cello or something?
Is this a cello?
What is it gonna do, a cello? Oh yeah, this is cello.
Yeah. We've even had the original band show up in the live chat, and they're like, I don't remember writing these riffs. And now the live stream is going to open for them on tour. So we've automated our tour. I don't even need to show up.
Did you see the comment that says the layer sounds much better now than in the past? Definitely improving. Almost sounds human.
Right. That's another weird phenomenon. People often say, like, wow, it's improving. Like, it's really like way different from when I heard it yesterday and the day before. But actually, it's not training at all. We finished training it, then we made the live stream. So everything it makes pretty much is in this. It's not like improving, but my theory is that the listeners are improving their listening ability. That's what I think. It's because so yeah, Vice picked this up, and it's been a funny month. But of course, so I'm like super interested in this live stream medium now. Like, what else can we do? Can we have audience interaction? Can we have visuals? And so Ginger started working on this. Music reactive processing shaders. This is going to be an open source project, and would like your help in making that kind of stuff. We want to take shader toy type of things and make them music reactive. We want to add natural language processing stuff for the chat room so that it can influence what's happening with the neural net, etc. Okay, so we can generate extreme metal. What's the logical next step? Publish scientific research on it. So we got generating black metal and math rock, this paper through peer review somehow. And also this album got through peer review somehow. Generating albums with sampler art to imitate metal, rock, and punk bands. Yay. And sure, we're like, imitating people's bands and automating their jobs or something. But actually, like, this is just a tool to collaborate with artists. And so bands like Avenged Sevenfold reached out to us to like help promote their Grammys, but then they protested the Grammys instead. I don't know. This breakcore artist, Drumcore, wanted to work with us, and he makes music. He makes insane music like this. Just like super hard electronic music. So we ran his music through our neural net, and as I was saying earlier, we have this curation problem. We can generate dozens of hours of material. How do we even find what sounds good? So we had to make a whole new tool for him. And here's all of the sounds generated organized. With spectrograms, you can see what's going on. Like, okay, these are like drones. What's this section? Noise. All right, I'm trying to look for something rhythmic. Here we go. Got it. And then on the left side is this bird's eye point of view. There we go. Let me find a good spot, save it. So this was his process, and he curated using this tool to make a whole new insane video. Yes. Insanity. So far I've been describing what you can do with a recurrent neural net, like an LSTM net. And I didn't go too much into the technical, but those kind of architectures are no longer state of the art. The problem with them is that over time, they kind of sort of start to sound more chaotic, which is cool if you're making extreme metal. But maybe you want to make things that are patterned. So the new state of the art now uses this self-attention mechanism. So everything it generates, it's also paying attention to what it just generated. It can directly access it, and then it can repeat patterns, and it generally sounds more human. Yeah. So that's the direction that we're going in next. And my time is almost up. Thank you. And I have 2 minutes for questions.
What were the parameters you put in the AI? What was the
Right.
its range from?
So we're giving it raw audio. We'll give it a full album worth of music, about an hour. And it's trying to predict amplitudes at the sub-millisecond sub-millisecond scale. Like, where's the amplitude going to go next? It's like at the shortest possible scale that you could generate audio. It's kind of remarkable that it's able to make anything that's listenable.
Why is it just a short period? Why a millisecond? Because it's not audible to the human ear.
I guess that's the way that audio is represented at the most raw possible level. There's this concept of sample rate. Most of CD quality audio is at 44.1K, and we're generating lower than that. And yeah, it's like trying to draw. It has no idea about music theory. Doesn't know anything about rhythm or notes. All it knows is acoustic waveforms, and it's able to extract all of that musical knowledge just from the data.
That was sort of my question. Is the oversampling influencing the characteristic of the sound?
Well, since it's
Because it does in traditional engineering, in control, and in different types of planning. It does severely influence.
Right. Yeah, since it's only predicting at this very, very tiny scale, it's good at certain things and really bad at other things. So it's good at imitating these short time scale things like the sound of someone's voice or the attack of a snare, and then really bad at remembering how to make riffs or song structures. And that kind of trade-off works out well if you're trying to imitate a band, but not imitate any of their songs.
Have you tried using different architectures like generative adversarial networks?
Right, good question. We've mostly been going down this path of recurrent nets using LSTMs. And we've trained hundreds of these to try to find the perfect hyperparameters. But we're reaching bottlenecks. It's slow, it's still not real time. I can't put it into a synthesizer and could be something that someone can play with. It's still not cheap enough where everybody can use it. So yeah, we're looking into GANs and attention mechanisms, and I think that's the way forward.
Would it make sense to train different neural nets for different kind of parts of song? Let's say one for percussive elements, one for melodic stuff. Did you try to do it that way, or?
Right. We've tried training them separately, and that's what we did for the drum corps Insane video. But training them all together, that's a really cool idea. Here's all the stems, and here's how they play and listen to each other. That's going to make even more interesting music, I think. For sure. All right, thank you.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about the pathway that I took to get here and kind of my motivations for the project that I'm working on, and maybe how you might be able to get involved. But first I want to show you just something so that when I talk about it, you don't have to try and imagine it. This is kind of the beginnings of what I think is one of the most exciting futures of music, which is immersive 3D audio-visual experience. And this is a piece of code that was handwritten by an amazing Dutch artist named Tarek Berry, who created this, this environment from nothing in 2009. This is the 2009 version of it. But the idea is that you kind of have control over the music that you're making in space. So you place these objects in space, and then you fly through them. This is going to be quite hard to do from here, but you can fly through them, and as you fly through them, you make you kind of generate the music in real time. I think I'm getting lost already. Oh no, I'm not. I know where I am. Okay, so Tarek has written this piece of music. He performs live with Tom York. He's on tour right now with Tom York, but he's given me his code so that I can start using it for science, doing science to it. So my background is both musical and scientific, and I'm interested in being able to represent physical systems or data with music and sound so that you could explore your way through it in a kind of immersive audiovisual way. So each of these objects that you're seeing, I mean, this is kind of old news these days, but when he did it in 2009, it was really exciting. I'd never seen it in real life, this idea that I'd had that if you could just represent data in space, then you could explore your way through it with sound and with visuals. And he now does this in domes, in immersive spaces, with multi-channel audio arrays, and he uses different kind of controllers to control his way through the instrument. I won't do a very extended demo of it right now because I don't have very much time. But I just wanted to kind of give you this idea that you can create music in real time rather than a kind of recorded beginning to end static piece of art. You can create art that is different every time you interact with it, and you can make it look and feel however you are feeling in the moment. So I'll just talk to you first about what led up to this project that I'm working on. And I like to always start talking about this by showing my favorite musicians from the past. So really my work is inspired a lot by not only the scientific thinking of these, well, in this case, all men with great mustaches, except Copernicus, but really this idea, I guess, that's been brewing inside me for a couple decades now, that there are insights to be found in how the universe works, how the solar system works, how we came to be, who we are. All of this can be explored not only through just kind of cut and dry science, but actually through music and through the pursuit of in a way, spiritual concepts of, in the case of Kepler, who was top and center there, he was convinced that the organizing principle of the universe was harmony, that God's organizing principle was harmony, and he was motivated to expose the natural harmonies in the universe to people so they could appreciate the intrinsic beautiful structure of nature. And in fact, a lot of these scientists were motivated by that same concept. I don't know if you guys all know who they are. Usually I do a quiz, but I don't think we have time for that. But we have Einstein, of course, Johannes Kepler, Nikolai Copernicus. Does anybody know who that middle guy is? Pythagoras. That's Pythagoras, yeah. Pythagoras and Newton and Da Vinci and Brahe, and these men were all were all really interested in understanding truth and in fact pursuing truth through beauty, which is a really interesting concept that my work is rooted in. Before I tell you about the project, I have to tell you about this concept of shaving a yak. So if anybody in computer science, does anybody know about shaving the yak? No, okay, this is a really, really useful concept that I learned when I was at the MIT Media Lab. So if you have a thing to do, like when Michaela was giving her talk, she wanted to give a talk, but in order to get the talk to work, she had to get the video to work. In order to get the video to work, we had to get the audio system working. And sometimes you have a thing to do. There are so many tasks that are in the critical path to do that thing, that by the time you get to the end of the chain, you're shaving a yak. So yak shaving is this concept of kind of plowing through all the prerequisites to achieve a main goal or objective. And so the project that I'm working on now and that I've brought to present to you has required a very long series of yak shaving. And as I just wanted to talk to you about that as a process as well for innovation, because sometimes a lot of the excitement is actually in the yak shaving rather than in the thing itself. So in my very earliest days, I thought that my thing that I was going to do was music. I thought I didn't really know anything other than this kind of music. That's me in the yellow vest playing the violin, and my family, my cousins and my sisters and my mom. And so I grew up playing music. I grew up thinking that I was going to be a professional musician. But then I didn't. Instead, because I was too afraid to do music, basically, instead I just took the easy route and studied aerospace engineering. And I went all the way through my PhD in aerospace engineering. This is how scared I was to do music. So I just kept on going with aerospace engineering. This is like, such is the power of my fear. But at the same time, I never really abandoned music. So around the time that I was finishing my PhD, I decided I should start learning how to produce music, because I knew that I was going to eventually want to do music, but I knew that in order to do the music that I wanted to do, I would have to learn how to make it. And that this meant learning how to produce, learning how to mix, learning how sound works, really learning about the physics of sound and learning about mixing and music production and music technology. So I started teaching myself music production as I was working at NASA. And after a while, I started to get invited to give talks. I was invited to Japan to talk about how space exploration affects our knowledge of ourselves, our understanding of ourselves. And this was a really big question for me. It was a lot to grapple with. I didn't necessarily feel qualified to address such a lofty, kind of philosophical question about technology and psychology. So I started doing a bunch of research. I was quite young at the time. This was 2001. That's kind of what I looked like in the lower right-hand corner. This is how the Japanese saw me. They made a nice little cartoon with big eyes. And so I went to Japan and started, and as I was preparing for this speaking tour, I re-encountered the ideas of Johannes Kepler, which exactly 400 years ago today, he published his book, which is now pretty much my Bible. It's called Harmonies of the World, and I carry it with me everywhere. So I brought it, I can pass it around so people can see it. 400 years this year is the anniversary of the publication of this book. What's so exciting about it is that he was one of the founders of modern astronomy. Has anyone heard of Johannes Kepler? Hopefully. Okay. Most people know of Kepler as a scientist. But what they usually don't know is, and if you look in this book, you can see, is that he made all of his discoveries through music and looking for musical harmonies and structure in the way that the planets moved with respect to each other. And he used data and observational data from Tycho Brahe. He used his own intuitions about geometry and about harmonics. And through those principles, he discovered the mathematics that govern the way the planets move with respect to each other. And so this is so exciting to me, and I started in 2001 trying to read that book and to understand that book. It's very, very difficult to understand. But what I did understand was the mindset of the people in the time of Kepler, and the way that they approached music. Music was not what it is now. Music was not entertainment. Music was not self-expression. Music was not even art. This is so interesting. Music wasn't considered one of the arts. Music was considered one of the sciences. Music was one of the quadrivium, along with geometry, mathematics, and astronomy. Then we had music. And those four tools were what people were using to try and understand our reality. And in fact, music in that time, there were three kinds of music. There was the music of the spheres, which had started, this idea of the music of the spheres had started long ago with Pythagoras. I have other books if you want to look at them. Just this idea that there's this intrinsic order in our solar system, in our cosmos, that can be perceived, but it's not really audible. There's a second kind of music having to do with our human experience and our human rhythms and, if you will, like the spiritual rhythms. That was a second kind of music that was thought to exist but also not be audible. And then there was a third kind of music, which was the only audible kind of music that was meant to mimic the first two. So literally, instrumental and vocal music what only existed to understand the music of the spheres and the music of the human condition. And so this principle is really what underlies my whole, I guess, my whole pursuit and my idea of a future of music where we use it as a tool for understanding our world and understanding ourselves, really, and to bring us closer together. So Kepler's book, as I'm passing it around, you'll see it. It looks a little bit like this. It's extremely dense. It's very, very, very hard to understand. So I started to ask, what if we could access these ideas more experientially? What if we could actually understand what Kepler was on about? What was it that like inspired him to invent this new way of science, doing science? This is kind of the way that he speaks, so I'm not going to read it because it's very long and difficult to parse, but really what he's saying in his works is that if we can, that our brains and our kind of human perception is designed to perceive patterns, and if we can see something and hear something, this is much more powerful than just seeing it or hearing it. And so he thought that the secret of the universe, the whole secret of everything, was hidden in these sounds of the solar system and these types of music. And so that was his mission, was really to find the secret of creation that was hidden and embedded in everything. And he issued this challenge, basically, which I took on personally, that for modern musicians to apply our modern arts and our knowledge, our current knowledge, because it wasn't really available to people in antiquity. And actually what he was referring to here is that in Ptolemy's time, Ptolemy was another very great astronomer and mathematician, there was not even musical polyphony. You didn't even have two notes happening at the same time in music. You just had one line. So Kepler was saying the music of the spheres is polyphonic, and it's very complex, and we need to really investigate it with as much technology as we can throw at it. So I knew that this was going to create a lot of new yaks to shave, and so I started trying to think about how am I going to learn how to take our solar system, which is sometimes represented like this, and make it something that's actually interactive and sonified, and where you can fly around and you can really understand the physics of what's going on through your experience. I knew in order to do that, I would have to learn some new skills. So while I was at NASA, I was working at NASA by then. I went to the MIT Media Lab to really try and get to in the center of this Venn diagram. I have like science and technology, and NASA asked me to summarize why I want to go study this, basically. And I had to explain that I think where the future is in fact, in all fields of knowledge, is reuniting and getting to the overlapping areas between different fields of knowledge. So I identified for NASA that I would like to bring art, because music is considered art still. Art and ideas and philosophy and science and technology, and right in the middle of all that is the sweet spot for innovation. So I went to the MIT Media Lab and I started trying to play around with ideas for how to represent information with sound instead of just visually. So at NASA at the time, this is how they looked at how do we get more information into people's heads? Well, just make more screens, more and more screens. And the more screens you can make, the more data people can absorb. But it actually doesn't work like that, because after a certain amount of screens and visual data, you kind of saturate somebody's ability to understand what's going on. And the extra visuals don't do you any good. And in fact, it can be just overwhelming. And I knew that if we could take some of the data that you want to represent with visuals and channel it into our brains, then our brains do this amazing thing where they can find new patterns that aren't really available to it just through the visuals alone. And so I started interacting with this community of people who are looking at representing data with sound, and that's called data sonification. Excuse me. So I met with Johan Gossman, who had taken this Mandelbrot set, which is a fractal mathematical equation, and he had created this interactive, and you can actually find this online if anybody wants to play with it. I can give you the URL. But he took the Mandelbrot set and he sonified it so that anywhere you click in the Mandelbrot set, what you're hearing is a superposition of the pathways in that particular mathematical series through the superposition of sine waves. So it's a very simple sonification, but it's extremely powerful in what it provides to your brain in understanding the mathematics. And in playing around with this, I got really excited because I actually, for the first time, and even though I had a PhD in aerospace engineering by that time, I finally understood the mathematics of the Mandelbrot set just by listening to it as well as seeing it in this exploration. So this made me really excited to keep pursuing my work. And at the same conference, I met Tarek Berry, who created that piece of software I showed you earlier. This is one of his compositions, and this is what it looked like in 2009. But just this idea of being able to represent musical objects visually in space and then to have the agency to fly through them, it felt like somebody had already created at least the environment that I wanted to create in terms of making the solar system experienceable. And so it doesn't sound like much now, but now we can do the sound design in Ableton Live, and there's been a lot of progress in terms of how it looks and how it feels and how it sounds. But the basic idea is that we want to take real data and make what you're seeing and hearing in there real data and make it experienceable directly. So the next yak that I had to solve was how to interact with this data. So in 2010, I left NASA and I went to work with Imogen Heap, and I was her studio manager and tech assistant and musical assistant. And at the time, she wanted to start creating a way of interacting with her music that was wireless, where she could run around the stage and do whatever she wanted, and she could interact gesturally with her music. And she's not the first person to do this, but there was not something that you could just get off the shelf that would do the kind of advanced music manipulation and visual manipulation that she had in mind for what she wanted to do. So we looked and we tried, but in fact, so what we ended up making was the Memu gloves, which I'm wearing right now, and which I'll pass around the next generation. Well, this is a prototype that I 3D printed, but you guys are one of the first groups to see the new glove that you can actually pre-order right now if you want, for the low price of 2,500 pounds. No, don't take a picture of that glove, but you can take a picture of these later if you want. Just because it's not very pretty, and the team will yell at me because if photos get out of a really badly 3D printed prototype, they're not going to be happy. Anyway, so we've just released the prototype, but this is Imogen. So Imogen wanted the ability to write, like in the studio, create, perform, and record new music with just her hands, just the gloves. And so these are actually very difficult problems to solve and different problems to solve. So we spent quite a few years. We started in 2010, so we're just getting to the point where were able to kind of start thinking about mass producing these things. But as it turns out, what she wanted to do, she's not the only one that wants to do it. There's a lot of people that want to be able to interact with computers in an intuitive, physical, custom way with their gestures. This is a very old system. This was wired in 2012, but this was kind of the first steps that we had taken. She's literally controlling everything that you're hearing and seeing. I'm not going to show the whole video because we don't have much time. But the way that the gloves work, so I've brought a couple pairs so we can hack with them this weekend if anyone is interested. Is everyone in here hacking? Is that are we in the labs? How is it working? Yeah. Oh yeah, okay. Absolutely. Okay, cool. So the gloves take data from the hands. They're really, this isn't like life-changing thing. All we're doing is kind of making it available to people and making it easy to use and customize. So they take the information about the bend of the fingers. So there's 8 bend sensors that are just analog resistive flex sensors in the fingers. They take that information into the data center on the glove, on the wrist. And then they also take in information orientation like your phone does, like it's just got a 9-axis IMU, a really fancy IMU in the wrist that knows the angles of the wrist and the accelerations of the wrist. Takes all that data and it puts it together and sends it wirelessly using OSC directly from the glove to the computer over Wi-Fi. So it's very, very low latency, very reliable and repeatable gestural interaction. And then there's some artificial machine learning, really, in our code where you can train it with gestures. So none of this is really, again, it's not rocket science, but or maybe it is a little bit rocket science. But it's exciting that you can then so easily train it, and I can give a tiny little demo if there's time, but if there's not, I won't. But what we quickly found out is that it's actually not really about the sensors. It's not really about the hardware. The most powerful thing that we can do is make the mapping of the gestures to music or to visuals or to robots be as easy as possible and be as sort of sophisticated as possible without being too complicated. And so we created software to go with the hardware called Glover, that I can also give a demonstration of if you want to see. But it's it's kind of designed specifically for musicians and performers on stage, visual artists. This ginger in the room has been using the gloves to perform in domes with beautiful visuals that you might see a little bit later. So the idea is just to create a system that allows you to talk to software that you are used to using in your system. So a lot of musicians use Ableton Live. A lot of musicians use other, like Logic or these kinds of software programs. Visual artists use Max MSP or Touch Designer or any of these kind of digital programs for creating art on stage in real time. And so being able to customize how you interact with your art is really very, very powerful and really exciting. So actually we think that this is the more exciting part of this is giving agency to people that's creating this whole new meta art of instrument design, because you get to basically create your own instrument, your own way of interacting. This is our team with Imogen on the upper left, just to point out that most of our team is women, which is really exciting as well. And there's a little video of how some of the people are using the gloves. What's my time? Oh, I went on tour with Ariana Grande in 2015. I was under the stage. She was using them to manipulate her vocals. And this is her drummer. I'm not her drummer, one of her dancers, who is also a drummer. And he's just playing with them for the first time and reacting to the way the sound is happening. And then we put them on his feet, and he's playing the drums with them. This is a composer in London who uses the gloves in an augmented way to augment the instruments that he's playing and composing with in the studio. This is our friend Chris Halpin, who has cerebral palsy and has basically created a whole air guitar set so that he can play his set with the gloves. And this is our team member, Chagall, who has choreographed her whole set to control everything with the gloves, including her dance moves are choreographed to create the music, to control her voice. She's here controlling the lights, the colors of the lights, and the visuals, obviously. And it's just a really beautiful way for her to express herself on stage. And so this has been an amazing yak to shave, pretty much my favorite yak, just because there's so many different things that are coming out of it. You know, I think as a tool for self-expression, it's super powerful. But I think also as a tool for scientific investigation, it's very, very powerful. So to get back to my thing, the last piece of the puzzle really to get me to the point where I could start to articulate what it is that I'm building. I met this amazing man named Hartmut Varm, who has written this book called Signature of the Celestial Spheres. And what he's done basically is take the work of Kepler and made it actually understandable. And he's visualized all these kinds of patterns that Kepler was talking about. And he's actually extrapolated from that and developed other visualizations of this idea of the order in the solar system. And I'll pass this book around too. It has really just beautiful, beautiful patterns that, like some of the things you see here, that these exist in our solar system if you just draw lines between planets as they move around the sun. And it's just like a spirograph, a beautiful, beautiful, like millions of different possible patterns that come when you start to look at the way the planets move with respect to each other. And so just to be able to take this data, which he's put on an app, which you can download, take this data and put it into Tarek's system that I showed you earlier. And then suddenly you're able to kind of immediately have access to these patterns in the solar system and to be able to see them and hear them and interact with them and fly through them. So for example, this is Venus and Earth as they move around the sun, and if you just draw a line between them ever so often over time, this pattern that gets created is this almost perfect, like we saw earlier in what Michaela was presenting with the hack that Johanna did. But if you could imagine those patterns then being sonified and then you being able to be immersed in them and fly through them, then suddenly you can learn things in a different way than you normally would. You know, this is definitely different than the way they're presented in Kepler's book. And so this as a learning tool is really exciting. Like if you were a kid and this is how you learned about how the solar system worked, I mean, you can imagine that would be a lot less boring than your normal classes. So we're building an instrument called Concordia. I say we because now lots of people are kind of joining me in this effort. It's going to feel, and it does feel a little bit like a game, because you're in a VR immersive environment or AR immersive environment. It's going to be a little bit like a game like this, where you're in a spacecraft, you're flying through, but actually what you're doing is creating music mainly. So it's audio focused, but it's a kind of a leveling up type of a game experience where you start really simple, like any kid could pick it up and play something that sounds good, but then you could build for yourself any level of, any degree of control that you like. So the whole instrument, Concordia, will be whatever kind of mapping you want, add it to the instrument, and then you can make any kind of hardware controller you want. So for me, I'll be using the gloves, but not everyone has gloves or wants to have gloves. So you could just play it with your phone, or you could play it with a huge cockpit of old instruments that you map to it, or just like a normal synthesizer maybe, or a bigger synthesizer maybe. So your level of hardware interactivity with the instrument is also scalable, and all open source and all online. This is my dream for the Concordia mothership. This is something like an old nuclear control room with instead of the ceiling having a dome where the planets are projected, and then everything that you are playing in the game is visualized in a headset, like an AR headset. So you kind of see a superposition of these beautiful Keplerian geometries and the sounds that they make superimposed on normal reality of the solar system. This is my lab in Brighton in the UK, where we're building the hardware aspect. In the very back, you can see a spherical dome that is being used to experiment with the kind of line between reality, or what's projected, and whatever's inside in your headset. And so, we'll be projecting things all around in an immersive way, but then we'll also be using augmented technologies and finding a way to also have a physical interaction with the physical environment. So playing with these boundaries between the physical world and the digital world and the musical, excuse me, the musical world, that's kind of what we're looking at in the lab. But the idea is that anyone in any fab lab anywhere could build any controller that's part of the instrument. So if you design a new controller, you upload it to the instrument, other people can download the instructable for how to make it in their own lab or in their house, and then people can construct their own kind of control systems. I'm not going to go through this, but essentially there's a whole economy associated with this, which is really exciting to me, because all of the data for Concordia will be on the blockchain, all the ways that people use it will be on the blockchain, the way that you can earn value or expend value in this community, so it's also kind of like an online world. So it's a kind of inside out, turning the music industry inside out, so that the contributions people are making and the value of those are from their participation and from the excellence of their participation, rather than just from the output, like monetizing or commodifying. Excuse me, I got something in my throat. Monetizing or commoditizing the output of what they're making. So it's more. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Right. So I kind of want a world where the value of what people are contributing is just that they are contributing, and that somehow is able to not be gamified or turned into an industry, but that it's completely open source and completely, merit-based, essentially. And a lot of people have tried to do this, so it's just exciting to be thinking about this from the very beginning in the design of the instrument. And so this general field that I'm promoting, or that I'm trying to reintroduce to the world, is this idea of music as an investigative tool. And so I'm calling it Investigative Music, and the name of the project is Concordia. So we are hoping to launch it this year. We're having Concordia Launchpad in Portland, Oregon this summer for an October launch of the prototype, and then we'll just be starting to build the whole platform of it after that, once we learn what we want to build and what we don't want to build. So thank you very much.
That's the thing.
So much people, so many projects, so many computers, one by one. Okay. So one also quick note, after Mordecai's lecture, should I call it lecture, presentation?
Yeah.
Something very cool. So after Mordecai does something very cool, we're going to go for a lunch break. And then after lunch, we're going to come back, and then LJ is going to show us something, which is going to be actually a live performance. So it's not going to be a presentation or something, just, keep the juices flowing after lunch when everybody wants to go to sleep. Okay, here's Mordecai.
I still don't have my computer connected. Hi. Okay, so I have this small presentation on the computer that we'll get to, I hope. So what I do is I do cymatics. I build cymatics apparatuses. What cymatics actually is, it's a very ancient study in visualization of frequencies and sounds. I usually introduce myself as the least tech guy in the room, which is kind of a joke, but very important to me, because what cymatics is about, it's not about code, it's not about digital representation, it's about mechanical representation. Basically, for me, what I find very interesting with cymatics is that we're taking apart the constructs of what music is and what sound is. So essentially, sound is a, forgot the, so sound is basically vibration, okay? We know this, physicists know this, but we kind of tend to ignore it because sound activates stuff in us. So my first project with cymatics involved deaf people who are very sensitive to the vibration of sound and have a bigger, like a more deeper understanding of how this works than hearing people. And then the other thing that I wanted to take apart was to take apart the experience of music. So for us, music is an emotional thing, it's an intelligent thing, it's either art or entertainment or science, but when you're looking down at the very basic level, music is a repetitive phenomenon. It's a frequency, it's a vibration that can go up, it can go down, it can go higher in amplitude, higher in frequency. It has two frequencies interacting. It has quiet, right? There's silence between notes. So basically what I was trying to do is trying to take apart the experience of music and deliver it to people who can't hear the music. So they can't associate what we associate with sounds or words when we hear them. I'd like to show these two things. This is a microscope that I've created, then I worked on it with the last MTF that I was, which was in Stockholm. Right now it looks, it looks bad because like I fried an Arduino board before coming here and I didn't really get the chance to fix. So this is something that we can hack into and kind of play around with settings. Can we do this, the computer first, or is it working? Okay. So I'd just like to talk just a little bit about sound so we have the same understanding about what it is. So we all know sounds, and we talk about sounds as in sound waves. And when you ask people to visualize sound waves, so people like to think that when they talk, they project waves into the room. And there are two problems with that version. The first problem is that it really doesn't account for the 360-degree effect that sound has. If we turn the speakers around, you'll still be able to hear, and not just projection from the wall. So sound, first of all, travels in a 360-degree area. It travels in a radius. And the other thing, when you're looking at this, it has a periodic feeling, but really this thing, the low points, in some way look like they're continuing the wave. So I like to say about sounds, basically we're talking about sound spheres, sound bubbles. Because when she's playing the violin, it travels in 360 degrees, and it has a periodic phenomenon, which means there are sound bubbles being generated at the speed of the frequency she's playing. So if she's playing 500 hertz, there are 500 sound bubbles being generated every second going in 360 degrees. This thing can account to our representation of waves, because what you have is, this is the sound source, and the sound is dispersing at the speed of sound, 360 degrees, and you have the bubbles, keep pulsating bubbles, which if you cut it into a two-dimensional representation, looks like a wave. So that's something that I really enjoy taking apart, because we're not talking about sound waves, we're talking about bubbles. Now, these bubbles actually do change the air, change matter that we interact with sound, because the bubbles compress air molecules. They can compress other materials as well. there's this one thing that I put in here for the benefit of Sonia, but also just to kind of engage our curiosity with what we can do with cymatics, or what we think we can do. So what you see here is a fossil of a diatom. This is like very primitive life forms, like around 200 million years ago. And this side, you see a frequency. This is a frequency-generated image, and I'll explain that this is, again, not digital. Okay, this is just a plate, a metal plate with sand on it. I'll show you like a video of it. This was generated in CymaScope.com labs, just to give credit where it is, where it's due. I'll show you a few more examples of this. So that what you see again, so this is a trilobite, which is like a prehistoric beetle. And on the left side, what you see is a frequency imitated image of it in water. This is pretty obvious. This is one of the most, like the highest definition that we've seen. On the left side where you see it says cymatic image, this is just water, light, and sound. So these are not, so it's actually incredible, because this is not a computer simulation. This is natural occurrence. This is something that, it's a representation. We don't really assume that turtles are created in this manner. But there's something to be said about symmetrical patterns in nature. And if we can see that these symmetrical patterns exist even on the frequency level, it kind of brings together how all symmetrical patterns have a kind of relationship. Yeah, I'll just skip this. This is a video created in my labs. So what you have here is this blue thing is a metal plate that are connected to a speaker. And on top, I just spray sand, okay? It's just, okay, so what you see is basically the plate is vibrating, but it's vibrating from the center outwards, and the time factor, like because it moves in time, so different parts of the plate vibrate in a different manner. So sand gets poured from where there is vibration to where there isn't vibration, and that creates these patterns. Okay, so that's basically about cymatics and sounds, and I hope that maybe like we can think about different ways to use nature to visualize or to experience sound and music as a periodic phenomenon. I'd like to show one video before I go into this. So the other thing that I have here with me, which is thanks to Michaela, which is a very crazy thing that I brought, I was commissioned in a way by the Israeli Chamber Music Orchestra to create an accessible music show targeting specifically deaf children, who we wanted to give them a experience of what sound and what music could feel like. So the first thing that I wanted to contend with was getting a bigger spectrum of experience. Because I've been talking to adults who have lost their hearing, and they say, yeah, so if music is playing very loud and I put my hand close to the speaker, then I can make out the beat or the bass or any kind of, but really just the low sounds and the very high volume ones. So the first thing was to enhance this range. And the other thing was we really wanted to give them a way to put their hands in or on something. Not just like wave your hand around the speaker to feel it, kind of really put their hands inside. So the solution was water, since water is a very conductive substance and there's so much less decay for the sound waves in water than there is in air. So I created this speaker that you can see, you will be able to see the demonstration with the live children. So I just created this speaker. There's a box and then the speaker and just like a bowl of water. I rigged some LED lights to make it like more interesting. So we have this here in the room and we'll be able to also hack or create something with it. And it gives them a sensation of vibration in the water. I love this video. Every time I see it, it gives me goosebumps because there's these children who can't hear at all. And then most children today, most deaf children have implants and they can hear. But some of the children we've been working with have no hearing at all. And even they show a big excitement when they feel this. And some of them actually seem like they're making the connection between seeing someone play the violin and feeling the vibration. So this child who's screaming in delight, she's completely deaf, but for her this was a new experience because she knows, like this is my theory, like they know that sound creates vibration, but it's a very limited experience. So suddenly we enhance this experience and we give them like higher notes and whatever. I want to show you this thing which we can play around with and hopefully also expand on. Just a second, let me, can you, and where's my, the HDMI. Where did I put it? There's no visual? No? So maybe this thing. Do you have this thing? Or similar to it?
No.
No. I have another one in the room. I didn't think of bringing both right now. What? The camera on? Yeah, the camera's on. I think it's the connector. Okay, so the connector isn't working. Is there a way, like another camera or?
Yeah, I'm sure that we can get, where's Alex?
Or like from a cell phone, can we project from a cell phone into the projector?
I don't know.
No?
How?
Okay. I mean, we can start with this and like maybe people can huddle up and see. Can I have some water? Thanks. I don't really need a camera. I just need the mini HDMI.
Because it's like, if most of people here are part of the labs, we can maybe put like just like show it as the labs in the
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he will be able to, but it's a bit, obviously it's a bit different at the moment. He's actually part of the talk.
It's in the box, that destroyed box on the desk. You think you can? Thanks. It's just a HDMI, mini HDMI to big HDMI. Yeah, it's not very standard. I have two, which that's the reason I have two.
You think one of those is, or maybe you think it is?
Should we?
That's HDMI, and that's just a.
No, that's not HDMI.
Yeah, because
No.
that's just a.
Like even if there's another camera that we can connect to the projector. You're-
Running, go get mine.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah, but we've got cameras.
I'll just say that really, like I said, it's very important to me to understand that there's no tech involved. This is just a speaker, and on top of the speaker, I put like just like a vessel for water, and then I shine light in 90 degrees onto the water and play sound through the water. And what you will see, what is actually shown right now in the camera, so maybe like people can step up and look, you can see like very intricate symmetrical patterns in water. Let's see if we get.
In the meantime, just walk up to it and just take a look.
Yeah, you can just walk up to it and take a look. Just check the view screen. Good. Check out the view screen because the.
What's it playing?
It's right now I'm playing 67 hertz. I chose like low frequencies because they get like very high definition shapes.
If you point it to 441, is it going to be?
441 is very high, so it's going to need more volume, and I'm not sure that we can. See, not really, but. Right now is like 160. They keep going down. Like the best ones are at the double digits. Yeah. Now that's an effect that we do use in live shows with the big bowls, where like someone go like, and there's like water spraying.
Around 20.
20 hertz is like too low. It's going to be very, just like a ring, as you can see. Right now we're at 40. That's.
You need a camera with HDMI out?
Yeah, or just put it on top of, just exchange my camera for something else to show this. Here, this is 20 hertz. It's not bad at all. But I had like stilts to stabilize it, I broke on the way here.
Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
shaky.
yeah. So we'll need. I had like stilts.
Still, idea.
Does the speaker below affect the shapes?
That's all that makes the shapes.
Yes,
But you mean the kind of speaker?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything affects, because we're talking about resonance. So whatever the relationship between the amp and the speaker and the vessel and the amount of water and even the frequency of the LEDs, like a lot of these things can interact and change. Essentially, the law in cymatics does have like this thing where this frequency will create this sound, but you will need precision tools, which this is not a precision tool in no way. This is just like a home project. The CymaScope is a precision.
Yeah, it's on the vacuum, so there are control parameters.
Yeah, there are labs. There's one lab in the world creating like lab-grade cymatic apparatuses, but this like very expensive, and it's very. It doesn't really go for music. I use this in like live shows. I do like live VJ.
And how LED can affect?
Well, I mean, it depends.
Sorry, Mark, we've got a camera here for you.
Okay,
Yeah,
can it
it's
just
got
like
HDMI out.
and it can it translate, like just transmit?
What do you mean transmit?
Like put in the HDMI.
If you got a HDMI cable straight in, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But doesn't have the, where's the cable there? So if you're projecting the light, then it projects a frequency, and that can actually enter the water. Like I use these LED lights that have like this cap, and they're not really, oh, that's beautiful.
Just like with strobe light.
Yeah. I actually do have, yeah, thanks. So this is the one, this is the, no, one of them.
Whoa.
Can you mute? Because you're feedbacking with the projector.
I'm not sure.
No, there's a feedback.
Yeah, but it sounds like pleasant.
For now, maybe we can mute the.
If I get my microphone.
Okay, maybe just show the. Can we mute the thing? Mute the. Oh, very high def. That's very cool. Yeah, okay. So this is the kind of stuff that you can see. This is actually when it's stabilized, so it'll be more of a symmetrical. But basically the sound excites the water, and what you get is standing waves, okay? Because the frequency has these nodes and antinodes, and they kind of trap the water into a 3D map of the frequency itself. So what you're seeing is just like the refraction of light on the surface of the water, and that's what creates these shapes. So that's it. I hope that I have
something that works with CJ's things, just totally like
yeah.
the next video.
We should definitely do like, I love doing live, like music videos with this. I've had some really good ones done. But we want to do maybe with Ginger's cameras to kind of redo this, like take this. There are a few things that we would like to do with this thing. First of all, what sounds we put in, how we create the sounds that we put in. People usually either sing or play an instrument, so we can experiment with that. Also, the lights. These are white lights, and I have like put in two colors at the same time. If we have like music responsive lights, and then the music, and then it responds to the music as the water responds to the music, and we create a mechanical stuff about it that we need to figure out, that I've destroyed on the way here. It's not symmetrical enough. I mean, this is pretty insane for a natural occurring phenomenon, but it can be more. It can be a lot more. I think that maybe I'll end this demonstration with a video of.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Every frequency has its own different shape.
Essentially, it is, as you saw with what I did with this with the sand. But you would have to have a higher precision instrument than this. You'd have to cancel out all the other vibration, and you would have to have a kind of controlled environment, very controlled. We don't even know what kind of frequencies are affecting this. It could be electrical currents from the amp. The amp could be like, this is an irregular amp that I made at home. But with this instrument, there might be an.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
And because you were even saying this earlier, So we both kind of work with cymatics, so I'm going to add to what he said because he was even saying it earlier to answer your question. So it actually changes depending on like the size of the speaker that you're using, the size of the dish, the depth of the water. So there's a lot of variables. So in terms of like, is there one love to every single frequency that's set in stone? It's definitely a product of several different variables. And so depending on like, if you change the shape of the container, then you're gonna have different things when you do the sand. If you had a square plate versus a circular plate, totally different patterns. So there's a lot of variables that determine that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But essentially, if you control all the variables and they're all optimal, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so just to show like what kind of symmetry we can expect to find when we do it right. So this is like the old prototype that I've created. There's no sound on purpose because we were showing this around to people that I didn't want to, that I didn't trust, essentially.
So there is this Simoscope that is under vacuum, and there are controlled parameters.
Yeah.
And the results can be repeatable.
Yeah.
There are actually like Tibetan mandalas emerging, like actual like spiritual revelation kind of stuff going on here. Yeah. And this thing, for instance, I stabilized it like I with metal rods connected to a 3 centimeter thick wooden slab, and I hung the speaker from springs and like stabilize it with string. So that's how you get this symmetry. So that's it for my presentation. If there's any questions, thank you.